Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
I'm not getting any sound.
It's great to have so many agents from different offices and brokerages all coming together to connect, collaborate, and gain some valuable insights from some of the top leaders in our industry. Today, we're going to have we have an incredible lineup of leaders from our K1 network, and we're going to share some notes that will help you with key strategies to stay ahead in this market. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Melissa Jung, team leader of Keller Williams Chervenick Summit County offices, and I'll pass it off to Jose. Let you guys all introduce yourselves and we'll get started. You're muted.
Muted. It's his first day, everybody.
That's the perfect way to start. Mark, do you want to introduce the rest of us?
Yeah, sure. So joined by Adam Matthews of TL of KW Chervenick East, I'll call it that. Danielle Sullivan, team leader she's an overachiever, so she's got two market centers, KW Elevate, KW Living, and then Jose speaks for himself, OP of us all, leader par excellence that we're grateful to be in business with. Before he dives in and kicks off what we're really doing together, you guys see these slides scrolling. Part of our role in K1 Network is we believe that we're stronger together and that the more we collaborate, the more we can learn together, the better off we all are. So you see in front of you a handful of opportunities that are coming up in the next handful of weeks that we want you to be aware of. So soonest on March 12th and 13th, if you're growing a team, if you want to get better in the kind of the hiring people, how to succeed through others, Peter Shabry is going to be leading career visioning and the leverage series out of the Solon office, out of KW Living. That's a big one. On the 27th, we're going to be hosting at American Title Solutions for anyone who's looking to grow their teams, level up, lots of different things. We'll have panels, again, team focused. And then starting on Thursday, April 17th, Scott Toombs will be coming back for Bold, and you'll get lots of information coming on that in particular in the coming weeks. But we've got a lot of learning to do, and I think it can be easy to say that, oh, spring gets busy, so I'm too busy to learn. And I would say you're never too busy to learn, and we're never done learning. So all three of those things may not be for you, but we hope that at least one of them is as you seek to level up your business in 2025. With that, Jose, I'll pass the mic to you and let you get us rolling with the meat of today's topic.
Awesome. Very cool. All right, so let's go over what we're going to cover today. There's really three key areas that we're going to go over. We're going to go over some national real estate data. We're going to go over mortgage data. We're going to go over some economic data. I think Gary's presentation was maybe like 130 slides. We're definitely not going to do all of that. But we are going to take some major tidbits out of what he said and kind of talk about it on our level. Then we're going to go into local real estate data because we all know that real estate is local, and what's happening in Phoenix, Arizona may not be happening in Northeastern Ohio. So we're going to talk about local real estate data, go over some real numbers, and then what we think are some trends to keep an eye on as the year unfolds, as we see kind of industry changes and stuff like that. And then, of course, we're going to have time for Q&A for people to ask questions of things we didn't cover. If there's questions throughout this, Mike Schmieder and actually everyone that's in leadership is going to be monitoring the chat. And so feel free to throw something in. We want this to be a conversation, not just like a presentation. So feel free to like throw stuff in the chat. That's the what of why we're here, of what we're doing. But the why behind what we're doing is we spend a lot of time prepping for something like this and giving you guys accurate information, because at the end of the day, we want our real estate agents that are associated with us to do two things. We want them to know more than the average agent out there, right? To have more knowledge, more information about what's going on in the market, and more ways to help our clients. And also we want them to know before. So it's more and before. We want them to know more about the market, but we also want them to know about stuff before you meet with your clients and before the market changes dramatically. And we want you to be equipped as you walk into a listing presentation or a buyer presentation. So that's what we're doing today. And now,
just to jump in on that, Jose, when people don't have perspective, they make bad decisions. That's what Gary Keller said from the stage. And oftentimes we think our job is to help people buy and sell homes. And it's like, no, our job is to provide perspective. And you can't provide perspective without understanding what's going on. And you can't understand what's going on without understanding the numbers. So if you're here and you're saying, I'm not a numbers person, I say, you're a perspective person. And so this is a conversation for you.
Yeah, for sure. Data disclaimer, you can read it. We did our legal responsibility that we're supposed to be doing. All right, so let's talk about national items. This is maybe a graph that you've already seen, but this is kind of a run through of how many houses sold in every year, okay? And so what that looks like is in 2024, you can see we're just under 4.1 million homes that transacted. That is existing home sales in the United States. So if you look back, you can see you have to go back to the 90s to get a year that was kind of as low in activity as what you had last year. You're like, Jose, you don't have to tell me that. I experienced it. I lived it. I understand exactly what you're saying. But so for 2024, we were at 4.06 million, which was down from 2023. The crazy part about this is when I looked at this and I saw this in a news article, think about that. In 1995, there were 70 million less people in the US and 40 million less jobs. That seems to me a very astonishing number.
Jose, will you go back to the slide?
Yeah.
So two things. One, something that I pulled from when Gary was sharing these, he said, if it sort of feels like 2008, it's actually a little bit worse in the amount of homes that sold, but that's because it does feel like it's 2008. And the only people that bought or sold real estate in 2024 were those that had to, right? Like those are we're going to get to a different graph later that says why people bought houses, but it wasn't because they wanted to buy houses or because they found value in owning a home. That number has significantly dropped. And so thinking through your business for 2025, focusing in on those 5 Ds, right? Like those are the only people that were buying or selling real estate in 2024. Okay, I just want to say one more thing. So we led some of these conversations in our team meeting at KW Living yesterday, but we've got 130 people on this Zoom, which is pretty cool. And I think there was a large theme around family reunion on pivoting a little bit into social media. So can we just stay on this slide for like 22 seconds? And if everybody wants to grab their phone, and I promise I'm not a social media person, but if you want to take a picture and post on social media that you're on a market update and you're learning things from other agents, and you can see that there's 130 people on here, I was going to take a photo and I didn't want to be the only one. So for 22 seconds, I'm going to leave this up here and I'm going to challenge all of the agents that are in business with us at K1 to just take a picture and say, look at what I'm learning today, and throw it on social media. And then we can get right back into the content. Sorry, go ahead, Jose.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle.
I made everybody do it yesterday at the team meeting too. So
is the 22 seconds up?
Fine.
Okay. Perfect.
I'll tag you in my post.
All right. So let's talk about home prices and what did home prices do last year. As you can see, for those that haven't seen this graph before, that kind of aqua line indicates a 4% appreciation line, a mythical 4% appreciation line in home values, right? So if you start back in the 90s, if it increased every year off of 4%, you can see where we'd be at in 2024. You can see right now, we are above the trend line now for, what is that, the 3rd year in a row, which some economists get concerned about it. I'd also say there was 12 years that we were below that trend line. So when people say, oh my gosh, houses feel so expensive, it's a combination of things. Partly we were below market of what it should have been for 12 years, and now we're slightly above that, right?
There was extensive conversation at Family Reunion given to kind of data around what happens with home prices. And we know by looking at this graph and looking at our industry writ large that What happens with the values of homes? Like they go up. And Jason Abrams said one of the more helpful quotes that I heard in this session saying, you may be buying at the top of the moment, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, but you're never buying at the top of the market. And I think when we talk about providing perspective to our buyers in particular who are saying, well, I'm going to wait for this, I'm going to wait for that. You may be buying high now, but this is what real estate does. And our job is to continue to remind people that this is what real estate does. Buy it and wait, buy it and wait.
Yeah, think about this. So like, let's say we had a magic time capsule and we could go back to 2005 or 2006 and buy all the houses on our street for 2006 pricing. How many of us would do that now? Because you'd be doing really well right now if you had bought those houses in 2006. Now, in 2010, it may not have felt that way, but you can see what real estate does over time. And so like, yeah, I would love to go back and be able to buy everything I could in 2006. All right. All right, so this is, we talked about volume, we talked about, talked about pricing, we also talked about the amount of houses that's for sold. This is the actual how much volume was out there. So this one was like kind of a little bit eye-opening to me because it says, last year we did 2.19 trillion in sales volume. Now we just said it was one of the worst years for sales, but when we talk about volume, it was actually like the third best year in volume since this graph shows, which is such an interesting, it's just like such an interesting perspective to have, because I think a lot of agents felt like 2023, 2024 were really rough years. And I do think it was, but when you look at GCI and if you look at volume, and if that's your scoreboard, it tells a different story of the amount of available opportunity there was out there. Anybody else?
I mean, yeah, third best year in modern history. I mean, who would say I'm down to clown for the third best year in modern history? And so take the win. You know, every story is a mixed bag. It's like there weren't that many units, but volume saved us. So take the win.
If I had to pick one, I would pick volume, not transactions. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So this talks about inventory to no one on this call that is now up to 100 and however many agents. Inventory is increasing, right? That's not groundbreaking news. That's not flashing media right now. It is going up, and the reality is like the only place it had to go was up, right? It couldn't really go any lower than what it has been the last few years. So right now we're sitting on a 3.7 month supply of inventory. Depending on who the economist is that you talk to, somewhere between 5 and maybe 6 months is considered a balanced market. I was talking to someone yesterday. Oh, I was talking to someone about trying to get into real estate. And he was talking about, I just don't think right now is a good time to get into real estate. And he's like, kind of like, almost was like trying to be sympathetic towards me that I lived through last year. I'm like, it is still a seller's market, right? Like we still have very low inventory. Is it higher than before? Yes. But if you're a seller, you're still in a pretty good seat.
And I think where we are right now, Jose, is we're starting to see stuff that's more similar and, you know, familiar looking to maybe a 2018 market, 2019, something like that. It's looking very similar to that, because I think what we have to remember, those that were here or not here, even before 2020 and everything happened, we've had several good years of real estate before that happened, where we were running on a, you know, 3-4 month market where, you know, obviously in cycles coming off of 6 months, 8 months, something like that. So I think it's just looking more similar to 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
As that was, which were great years.
Absolutely. Good point, Adam. I think 20, 21, 22 even, those are like unicorn years that we're just probably may never see again in our lifetime. And I would argue that it may not even be healthy to see it again in our lifetime. We're returning to a more normal market, and exactly like Adam said. So good. So this one, to give you a minute for your eyes to adjust to all the graphs, but here's what I want to point out with this. This is listings with price adjustments. And so in January 2025, what this says is 31% of the houses out there did a price adjustment. Look at January of 2024, that number was 24%. And then you even go back to January 2023, you were at 9%. So you went from 9 to 24 to 31. You can see how it's trending, right? And so my encouragement to you on this call is, if you are not brushing up on your price adjustment conversations with your sellers, you're doing yourself a disservice by being by shying away from that. And maybe you never have, and maybe you need to connect with a productivity coach at the market center about how to do that, or what's the right scripting, because I've never had to do that because I got licensed in 2022. But understanding the dynamics and the fiduciary responsibility that we have with our clients to give them good information and how to consult with them about a price adjustment is a skill set that we need right now. Because we're almost at the point where a third of our listings are needing price adjustments.
Can I add something here? I think that this goes back to like, that market is starting to balance out a little bit. And so from that one side that said volume is still very high, the houses are still going, there's still equity in them. They're still being priced high, but the buyers are a little bit pickier, right? And as a listing agent, you have to consult your sellers that what they might have gotten away with in 2020 and 2021, they cannot get away with any longer, or they're going to be, you guys are going to be talking about a price drop in the first few weeks.
Yeah, so there's a saying, I don't know if it's a saying I made up or a saying I heard somewhere, but we're going to go with it, which says, when the market changes, the first people to understand that is the buyers and to know that. Second is realtors. Third is sellers. You know, so if I'm sitting down with the seller, this is probably something good for them to see, to say like, hey, yes, we can shoot for your number, and understand the market has changed and we're seeing more and more price adjustments. This is not my data. This is just data that I'm showing to you.
And I think too, if you have data like this on your listing appointment, again, take pictures of this. When you're looking at a 31% price reduction for this year based on the 24 and a 9 the year before, this is a great time to bring up in a conversation of why it is important to price it correctly to start with. This is the tool you probably use for that.
Yeah. Do you want to chase the market, or do you want to like hit it right? Yeah. And thanks for bringing up the slides. All the MCAs will make sure that you guys get these slides. We'll make them available to you. We'll make sure that they get out to you, so you don't have to like screenshot every shot here. All right, so let's talk about mortgage rates. I think we all know this. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Mortgage rates went up in the last couple of years. I'm not sure if you guys know that, but they have went up. Their last year, the average was 6.72. We're going to talk about what 2025 mortgage rates are going to do a little bit later, kind of more in depth. But this is kind of just a graph that shows you what interest rates have done. This I thought was interesting, actually. So this is for those that have mortgages. 74% of the people out there that have a mortgage that's at or below 5%, which I think is important, because if you're in the 3s, if you're in the 4s, and the rates are in the 6s, I think those people are going to have a hard time giving up a 3 and going to a 6.5, or giving up a 4 to go to a 6.5. I think people can go from 5 to 6.5 a little bit more easily, but the 3s and the 4s, until they get down to 5s, unless they have a very good reason, like Danielle said, they're going to hold on to those interest rates. So I think that's part of the inventory that we're still seeing, is what is that? 56% of the people out there that are sitting at 4 or below, they're going to probably have to see something in the 5s to get them real motivated to come off of that, or to have some other financial distress or situation that's going to move them off of that.
And the added piece of data on this is, I think, was it 38% of homes are owned free and clear with no mortgage? And so it's not only to 74% of homeowners, it's actually a much larger number than that. have a disincentivized kind of perspective on why would I buy something with a mortgage in this market.
Yeah.
Sorry, I stepped over you, Melissa.
No, that's okay. That's what I was going to say. And also 78% of these homes have more than 58% equity. So where you can find the need for someone to sell in that is maybe, they're talking about credit card debt being so high. We had a lunch and learn here in Hudson today, and it was with a lender. And he said, if 78% of these homes have 58% equity, you need to be reaching out and talking to them about that. What can they do if they sold their home right now? Maybe it's pay off college debt, credit debt. They have so much equity that might be the push to get them to make a move.
Yeah.
And like I said, it was Mark said, was it 38% of homes are paid for?
I think
Yeah.
that was the number.
So, 1 out of every 3 people has a paid for home. To me, that's a really great opportunity when you're talking to people and having these conversations about what they could do as far as investing in real estate
Sure.
and the power they'd have with that equity, especially, on a paid off home where the appraisals are coming in right now. So I just wanted to add that tip.
Yep. Great. All right. So let's talk about affordability, because I think that is you talk to the average person at a smoothie shop in your neighborhood. Affordability is the thing that they're talking about. They're not really talking about the amount of houses for sale. They may be talking about interest rate, but that's really disguised as affordability. So when you think about affordability and you're talking to a consumer, affordability really is made up of 3 different things. So you might want to, if you're not well versed in this, you might want to write this down. Affordability is a mixture of interest rates, home prices, and then salaries and wages. Okay, so that's what makes up the affordability of this little graph here. Interest rates, home prices, salaries/wages, right? So if prices are high and interest rates are high, but my wages have went up dramatically, that's still going to be affordable, right? And so you can play with any one of those 3 numbers, and that's how we come up with affordability here. What we're seeing in this graph is part of the story. I'm going to add a little bit more, but you can see this, I don't know, orangish line is a principal and interest as a percentage of income. And you can see right now, so what that means is if I make 100,000, 32% of that is being attributed to housing and my principal and interest. The reason I think that's only part of the story is how many of us here in the last 12 months have our taxes went up dramatically, right? Our taxes have went up dramatically. How many of us here on this call has our insurance also went up dramatically on our house, right? Everyone probably. And so this is just talking about principal and interest. I think a fuller picture is principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. And I think when you look at that number, it's probably going to be way higher than that 32%, right? So I think that that's a number to keep in mind. And that's a real kind of it's really what people are feeling out there is not only are interest rates high, not only are prices high, but hey, taxes are higher, insurance are higher, and all of these other things, eggs are higher, all of those things. Did I beat that dead horse? Okay.
I'll just jump in for a quick second on that, Jose, that they talked about Canada for a minute. We're not going to talk about Canada, but the affordability rates in Canada are far worse. A much bigger part of your world has to go towards housing in Canada, but it's a healthier real estate market right now. And they made the point that it's all relative. We as US consumers are just used to housing occupying X percentage of our world. 32% is not a bad number, but we're just used to it being this. So as it's grown from whatever it was, 24 to 32, it feels worse. But it's more about our perception than it is about some objectively difficult reality.
Right. Yeah. So this was to me, this was a very eye-opening. I could tell I nerd out about these numbers and these graphs, but this is a very eye-opening graph when I saw it at the vision speech at Family Reunion, which was, this is the lowest number of first-time home buyers that I can ever remember. I got licensed in 2002, so you can see it's first-time home buyers are definitely taking it on the chin, and more of them are delaying buying or not able to buy or not interested in buying. I think there's a lot of different factors there, but to see it at 24% of all buyers are first-time home buyers, that's a pretty low, staggering number.
You know, also when Gary was talking at Family Reunion, they made this was a really powerful thought. The average home buyer, first-time home buyer now is 38 years old. That was just astonishing to me. 38 years old. So I think that goes back to, you know, just educating our buyers. I think we have the different groups of people, like they want to do fun things instead of buy a house, or they don't want to take care of a house, this and that. One of the big things too, I mean, with the cost of rent, we won't even go into that today, but that's also atrocious. But they talked about, you know, having you talking to your buyers and living below your means, making sacrifices now to build up basic assets like the real estate that you own. If you ever have a problem later, those basic assets are going to bail you out. So I think 38 is just crazy. And I think we have, you know, when Mark talked about perspective, we do have those buyers that are waiting for the prices to come down. We all have those buyers. So that's just a conversation I think that we have to keep having, because that's not, you know, really what's going to happen. But yeah, average first-time home buyer right now is 38 years old, which I thought was crazy.
Think about that. I mean, so much of people's wealth is built in real estate. So if I wait until I'm 38 to buy my first house versus someone who buys their first house at 23, 24, what's that going to do for their long-term wealth building strategy? It's going to like put them at a 14-year disadvantage, basically. And so one strategy is, how can I help young people start building wealth by buying their first house, right? And that's a conversation to have with your database right there. Like, right, like average age is 38. Let's not let your kids, your college kids, like, let's not have them fall into that trap. How can we help them get into a house?
Can I add something here? They were also talking about like generationally, right? So some of the younger millennials, some of those Gen X and Gen Zs, they were in the house during 2008 to 2010, and they saw their parents maybe go through foreclosure or beyond. I mean, like I won't tell you how old I am, but I was in the house when my parents were going through that. And so in 2010 or 2009, so generationally, there's a lot of fear in that, in those age groups to then go into that home buying process. So something that we were talking about yesterday in the team meeting is like, if you're going to make your business around first-time home buyers, you have to become like the realtor celebrity that does this at the highest level. You have to educate, maybe you bring some of these data points into those first-time home buyers. And a lot of it is going to be through education, because again, there's not this desire to own a home. There's a little bit of fear associated with it just because of the generation that they're in and the generation that they saw go through that 2008, 2010 spot.
Yeah, that's a good perspective. Unemployment, I'm not going to talk a lot about this, but right now we're hovering right around 4% unemployment. You can see it kind of ebb and flow throughout the years of the U.S. economy. Personal savings rate. So this is, I don't know, Danielle, if you just mentioned this or if it was Melissa. So back in November, I was at a end of year advance with the team, and one of the lenders, they were given their market update, and he said that we expect a bunch of refis in 2025. And I was like, I'm calling BS on that. Why would people be refining in 2025? That doesn't make any sense to me when I know that interest rates are probably going to be right around where they're going to be at. And I said, please help me understand that. And he said, what he is seeing and what they predict is that so many people have so much consumer debt that they're carrying at 14, 17, 21%, that people are starting to refinance out of that and then take into consideration the equity that people have, right? And so it makes sense to refi, get out of the 20% interest rate, give up my 4% and go to a 6.5%, and my overall payment is less. And I think that's I was like, okay, I can buy that. And I'm curious on if that actually happens. Since November, I've talked to 4 people that are in the process or have done that like in the last few months. And so I think that's a very real thing to like understand and talk to people about like the amount of debt that they're carrying. And you can see here on this graph that just says that people, basically at the end of the day, people are not saving money. And I think the reason people aren't saving money, it's not because of lack of wanting to, it's because things are not affordable. Their lifestyle doesn't allow for them to save. And so when you hear someone talking about refinancing, it may be because they are in that situation.
Well, and one of the added points that was made is that generationally, and this is some of what Adam was touching on a minute ago, is that I'm a millennial. I'll stand up as a representative for my generation. We value experiences over assets. I would rather do a fun, cool thing, which costs money, rather than do something boring that's probably smart. And they said this is a good line that's kind of spicy if you want to use it with your people. Do you want to be house poor now or house poor later? And I think it's having holistic conversations with our client base to say let's talk about assets. Let's talk about liabilities. And I'm not a financial professional, but I want you to make sure that you're understanding the financial implications of the decisions you're making today.
Exactly. Cool. Inflation, I'm not gonna talk about a lot about that. We all know the inflation's out there. We started to see the Fed ease up on rates. Right in this period here, we started to see them get a little bit eased up on rates and bring rates down a little bit. And you can see then what happened is it started to tick back up. They really want to be around 2%. That is the target rate. As you can see, we have not seen that target rate since 2021, hence what has happened with interest rates since then. And so all indications before in the fall where rates are going to continue to come down. Since this screen happened here, it's been kind of like, it's going to be a wait and see approach if we're going to bring down the interest rates for the Fed because of this graph right here, basically. Cool. Underwater homes, non-existent. People have a ton of equity. They're sitting on equity over the last few years. And we're seeing very few situations where people have houses that are over mortgage what the house is actually worth. I missed one. So let's talk about new home construction. So this line here, that is what they want to see is this line indicates how many houses they should be building, new construction should be happening in any given year. You can see we went 13 years below that line. So oftentimes I'll run into people and they'll talk about real estate. It seems to be everyone's favorite conversation. And so they always ask like, what is going on with inventory and why, more importantly, why is there such a shortage of inventory? This is one ingredient of it is we went 13 years under building new houses. And now we kind of are living that out. Yes, it's mortgage rate lockdown, but it's also this, that for 13 years we were underbuilt and now we're living through that. Cool. All right, so that's national news. Let's talk about local real estate data. So the information we pulled was, the information you're about to see is single family homes. It's these counties here. I couldn't include everyone. Sorry for my Mansfield people. Sorry for my Youngstown people. I didn't get everyone, but I tried to give a good indication of like kind of like where some of the areas that we're in. Okay. So this is number of active listings out there right now. A lot of numbers on here, but you can see if your eyes just go across, say your eyes just go across January, and you can see kind of how many houses were actively listed every year as we kind of plot along 18, 19, 20, etc. So you can see we're up, right? We're up. We're at 4,000, a little over 4,000 houses for sale in this area. We're at the first time we're pre-pandemic levels. And also understand like it's still not a very high number relative to other years that we've experienced, right? We're still on the low side of things. So it's trending higher, but it's still a seller's market, right? Okay. Number of new listings. I'm always fascinated by this because I think we went through a period in the pandemic where we're like, there's no new houses on the market, or there's no houses on the market. There's actually more houses being listed in 2020, 21, 22 than what there was this January. It's the rate at which they were flying off the market, right? It's just, they were just going so quick. It wasn't that we ever had people not listing their house in that period. It was just a matter of like, hey, these things are just moving so fast. The demand was there.
Well, I think if you're looking at like leading indicators too, right? Like if you look at this slide, if you look at the last slide, like I feel like in some of our Facebook groups, people are like, did spring just happen last weekend? So if it feels like it's moving a little bit more and your sellers are getting ready, these are good numbers. Like they're leading indicators
Yeah.
a little bit, even if they're inching up a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so number of sold homes. This is how many houses closed every month for the last however many years, 10 years. So you can see here, our January was not great compared to other Januaries, about where it was at last year, right? Not as good as 2021, not as good as 2022. And we went back and said, hey, like this is the worst year in units sold in 10 years locally. I don't know if it goes back further than that because the MLS only gives me 10 years of data. But if you look at just the amount of units sold, this is the worst year it was in 2024 in the last 10 years. So it's very indicative of what the national market's happening, right?
I also think something important to add is Gary said when you go into any of these cycles, like you guys know, it takes 3 to 5 years to come out of it. So if you look at the bottom numbers, it's going to take a few more years. So a lot of the conversation was buckling down a little bit, keeping your expenses low, because we're not coming out of it just yet. If you look at 2022, 2023, 2024, we've still got a few more years of this. It's not just going to jump right back up there.
Yep. That's a good point.
So what's like, it is interesting because sometimes nationally we don't see it locally as quickly, and it looks like it's falling into place the same way.
Yeah. Again, way too many numbers on this screen, but what this says is the amount of volume, we just went over sales, is the amount of volume. And so you can see here, this is the third best year in volume outside of 2021, outside of 2022. It is the third best year in volume that we had in Northeastern Ohio. So again, if your scoreboard is the amount of units, then you're going to be, this isn't going to matter. But if your scoreboard's volume and GCI, which is directly related to volume, then this tells you everything that you need to know as far as the amount of available opportunity out there in the market. Cool. So I often get questions about like, okay, Jose, this is a lot of information and this is some data. How can I pull this for myself? Maybe I just want to know what this looks like for me. So I'm going to just stop sharing the slide deck and move over to the MLS. Mark, can you see the MLS?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm just going to show you real quick. If I'm an agent, I'm going out and I want to either post something on social media about my local market, if I want to post something about the county that I live in, how do I do that to make it relevant information for myself, right? And so what you're going to do here is you're going to go to this stats tab right here. And you're just going to hit stats. And then you're going to hit what do I want to see, right? If I specialize in land, then I want to do that. If I want to do residential income and I do a lot of multifamilies, then it's going to be there. For this situation, I'm going to do residential and I'm just going to do single family. Okay. And say I am in, let's say I'm in Wadsworth and I want to do Wadsworth. I just type in Wadsworth right there. It's going to type up. But whatever it is that you want to do, you're going to pull that. But I'm going to just do, I'll just do Wadsworth, I guess. So Wadsworth School, right? So I'm pulling all of the information is for single family houses in Wadsworth School. And then I'm going to customize what do I want to see. So in the past 5 years, I'm going to say, I want to look at the number of houses that sold in Wadsworth. And I'm going to break it out by month. So well, I'm going to go over that again because I feel like sometimes I go over this really quick. So residential, single family, and I'm picking what I want to look at. Do I want to look at a zip code? Do I want to look at a county? Do I want to look at a school district? I'm picking Wadsworth. So I'm going to pull up the past 5 years, the number of sales, and then group it by month. And all I hit is generate, and you'll have all the information that you need to become your local expert and be able to show everyone how smart you are, to tell them that in Wadsworth School District, there were 16 houses that sold in December, and you can kind of make an Instagram post, you can make a video based on this information, and like you become the local expert. You're going into a listing appointment, you're going to buyer presentation. This would be helpful information for you to be able to have, to be able to show them that you know the market and this is how many houses that sell every month and etc. Sound good? Okay, can feel the excitement. All right, so trends to keep an eye on. Mark, would you mind sharing about this?
Sure. So in 2024, average agent nationwide sold 5.4 homes. And averages in real estate, I feel like our industry is the most deceptive industry as it relates to averages, because Gary made the point that 60% of you guys don't do anything. Not you guys, but you guys writ large. And so that's deceptive. If you sold more than 5.4, you can pat yourself on the back, but maybe not that much, because really the point is, if you lead generate, if you do what the MREA tells you to do and you lead generate, you should at least be on the trend line to do more than that. In our areas, our K1 agents are doing a lot more than that. The trick here is Jose, can you go back one slide super quick? Over the course of the last 10 years, 500,000 agents have joined NAR. And they've been predicting 3 years in a row now. This is the year that the apocalypse comes and hundreds of thousands of agents get out, and that year hasn't come. And so that just squeezes the industry more, which we all feel.
Yeah, and I think the volume per agent is relevant in that conversation because, again, if I'm going to renew my dues or not renew my dues and stay in this or get out of it, it's based off of the amount of available income out there. And so, yes, the sides are down and the amount of available income is out there because of the volume per agent.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move fast on some of these next ones because of timing. So again, this just talks about how much debt people are carrying. You can see how high this has gotten over the last couple of years and how it's been going up and up and up and up very steadily. And this last year, we've really seen a lot of people, not only just student loan debt, but it's also other consumer debt, not mortgages, houses, not houses, cars, credit cards, things along those lines. We're just seeing a lot of debt out there. And so that was part of the conversation that we already had around that. We already hit on that. Okay, so let's talk about home insurance. I've had several of you guys text me to ask me about the home insurance changes. And I think this is something as an informed agent we should know about. If you've had a conversation with the seller, if you had a conversation with the buyer about roofs and home insurance recently, this is probably very relevant for you. As you probably already know, home insurance companies are taking a much closer look at insuring properties, especially regarding roofs for whatever reason. So understanding home insurance, getting a home insurance quote soon in the closing process is going to be really important for you. I had an agent on my team. She said basically a deal fell apart because insurance company said it absolutely needed to be replaced. The seller said absolutely not. I'm not replacing it. And that deal fell apart. And so just understand like those conversations are real. We're seeing increase in premium for home insurance across the board. And so prepping your buyer and prepping your seller around that is going to be really, really important. We're going to fly through some of these. So National Association of Realtors does this profile of home buyers and spits out a lot of information. We're not going to hit on everything because there's just too much to cover. There are a couple key things that we really want to make sure that you guys see on here. So weeks in a home search, average buyer takes 10 weeks in a home search. So think about your command, think about how good your follow-up is on a buyer that you meet. They're not buying next week, probably, if this is the first house they looked at. It's a long-term game, and being able to be top of mind with them for the next 10 weeks plus is very, very important. So this one we thought was very interesting. We do want to spend a second on it, is the average. So 75% of the buyers out there talk to one agent before they decide who they're working with. They interview one agent. When you span that out to, hey, I'm going to talk to 2 agents, we have 91% of the people out there talking to 1 or 2 agents. So how important is it to be, one, in front of your database to find out what's going on in their lives, and then 2, open houses, first points of contact, sign calls, like all of that. It literally is speed to that buyer. Any other comments from anybody? No, Jose, you're talking enough for everyone. Okay. First steps in buying process. I'm not going to go over this just because of timing. Information sources buyers use. It's all really good information. When you get the slides, you probably should look at this. This is one that I would spend some time on it, because if I'm creating a website that wants to be buyer friendly, this is what my website should have. It should have detailed property information. It should have property photos, obviously. Floor plans every year have creeped up. I look at this every year, and floor plans every year is going higher and higher and higher. So if you're not doing floor plans, you could be missing out on catching buyers through your website. You can spend some time looking through this, but this is what buyers are looking for on your website. Despite all of the NAR stuff that happened last year, 88% of the people out there are still using realtors. Shocking, said no one on this call. Right. How buyers found their agent. Vast majority are referrals or use the previous agent. And you can see everything else. Danielle, do you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so I think this was telling, we talked about this a little bit yesterday at Living, but Gary basically said, I think a lot of times we know that we want to be the first people in the house or the last people in the house, right? Because we want to leave the first impression or the lasting impression, and we have to pivot. Now we're the first people in the house. We no longer want to be the last people in the house. Sellers that interviewed, 81% of them only interviewed one agent. And so Gary said, you don't have to be the best, you just have to be the first, and you just have to lead generate. So if you can get in the door, share your value proposition, they're already hiring. They have their hands raised, they're looking for an agent. Chances are they're not interviewing that second or third one. We always feel like they're interviewing a bunch of them, but they're not. So we don't have to be the best, we just have to be the first, and we have to lead generate.
100%. Yeah, I see so many agents getting caught up in like perfecting the listing presentation, and like making sure everything is absolutely perfect. It's really just about getting to the kitchen table. That's what it's really about. Due to time, we're not going to go over all of these, but they are worth looking at on your own. Commercial trends, spend 2 minutes on this, not even. If you dabble in commercial, understand some of these trends that are going on. Office is going through a reworking right now, we'll say. They have a record high vacancy rate. Basically 1 out of every 5 commercial spaces for office is vacant at this point. That's a big deal. That's a high number. Retail somehow, retail is resilient. It has stayed. I would have guessed 10 years ago with the onset of everyone buying stuff online that retail would go down. We have not seen that. We've seen definitely a need for a physical space when it comes to commercial retail. Multifamily, we have seen rents kind of skyrocket, and now they kind of have stagnated, and we're starting to see them kind of settle in. Industrial, same thing, went kind of crazy through the roof during COVID, and it's kind of like settled back down. I think the more important thing, Danielle, what did you want to hit on with the commercial?
Well, two things, because I just saw under retail, it's so interesting that the first thing says it's shifted towards a mixed use or an experience driven spaces. So like, again, going back to the generational thing of people pay for experiences and not wealth right now, like we would rather be in a sky zone or in some VR thing than outside. So it's interesting. And I know that you guys see that as well. I think more importantly with this, I feel like sometimes you see this and you think you're dangerous enough to go into commercial. So take some of this with a grain of salt, know it enough so that you can have a conversation with a potential client and then refer it over to your commercial agent in your office, make a nice little referral check on it, or partner with somebody at your KW office to help you with commercial. So just wanted to put that little thing in there for you.
Cool. All right, so let's go over a couple predictions. I'll back on this. So the first time I heard Gary Keller speak was probably about 15 years ago. I was at a conference with another agency, and they had a bunch of leading people in the real estate industry. And this actually probably was around 2010 when we were going through a big shift in the market. And there was like 4 or 5 people up there. The first 4 people went and talked about how bad the economy is and went over all the numbers and blah, blah, blah. And during the whole time, I saw Gary fidgeting and getting very excited to talk. And what I remember distinctly him saying is like, I don't really care what the market does. I care what our agents do and how they win in the market, right? And that's what we're here for is, yes, the market's going to do what the market's going to do, but we care about how you guys do and how you guys react in this market and how we can help you succeed in this market. So one of the tools that we created, when I say we, it's not really we, it's Jenna who did this for me. But this is a very helpful tool. You can scan that QR code. It will take you to a Google Drive, and it will, you can make a copy of it and then you can edit it. And so what you just need to do is edit where the closed goal is. So if you say my closed goal is 10 million in volume or 100 million in volume or 10 units or 25 units, you put that number at the top where it says closed goal, it'll automatically adjust what transaction volume or closed unit volume you need for every month. Okay. Now, this is not a national number. This is based on Northeastern Ohio numbers that are accurate, proven. We've kept track of seasonality on my team for a very long time. So this is just a tool for you to be able to go in and say, hey, I want to do 100 transactions this year. How many do I need to close in January? Am I behind? Am I ahead? Whatever the case is. I think it's a cool tool. Hopefully you guys can get some use out of it. All right, so let's talk about what we expect 2025 to look like. So prices, everyone that I've well, this actually, I'll just go over this slide because this is the most important one. This is 25. How many are there? Average of 22. So 22 leading economists out there from Redfin to Fannie Mae to Zillow to NAR all put out their opinions of what prices are going to do. All but 2 of them said prices are either going to stay steady or go up. Right? And so that's not like one person out there saying it. That's not my guess. That's not my gut. This is like a bunch of economists all saying that we don't expect home prices to go backwards. So I think this is very important if you're talking to a buyer and they're like, oh, I'm going to wait for prices to go down this year. I don't know if that's going to happen. No one knows for sure. Morgan Stanley apparently thinks they're the only ones that think it's actually going to happen. But this is a important understanding for clients. If you're working with a seller and they're like, oh, it's going to go up another 10%, it's not going to go up another 10%, right? So this is just good information for maybe you to stick into a listing appointment or a buyer presentation. And Mark, I think you're going to take this, or were you supposed to go? Were you supposed to take the last one?
Yeah, all good. All good. We're saying the same things. Yeah. Bottom line is we don't expect dramatic changes as it relates to the mortgage industry, I think there's cautious optimism that things should ease up by the second half of the year. Fingers crossed that happens. With the change of administration, all of that, it's hard to predict with a lot of these things. And Gary did spend a decent amount of time talking about policy, which isn't typical. But this is kind of what we're looking at, is we likely will stay somewhere in the sixes, maybe get down into the fives. But that's not what most kind of big picture economists are saying.
Yeah. So that's all we have. We are more than happy to take questions. I don't know if there's questions in the chats or anything along that line. Open it up for questions. That's what we're here for.
Jose, you mentioned a smoothie shop earlier. I was going to ask, what smoothie shop can people find you at?
Actually, I make my smoothies at home.
I figured. I didn't figure I'd see it one.
I mean, it sounds like we did an amazing job, and no one has any questions for us.
Amanda's got one.
Would love to hear from Amanda.
I know, and it's not really a question. This tells us all that it's not as bleak as we imagine as realtors, right? Because we're all looking at, oh, there's less transactions. Oh, we've done less business. But the reality is we have to teach buyers that if they have real estate, if they invest in real estate, if they own a home, that they can really create wealth, and that they can have the same amount of money that a lot of these sellers have, where they're sitting on they've got a lot of wealth built into their real estate. And that wealth has just, if you look at just even the 4%, 25 years ago, if the house was worth 222,000, it's worth 444,000, in 20 years. So by actually buying houses and stopping spending money on, like you said, experiences and putting it into a house, I feel like we have to keep on, as agents, educating people about how you build wealth through real estate. And the first step is to own your own home. So I guess my question is, how do we keep on creating this kind of talk to buyers that buying a house, yes, you might have seen your parents unload their 401ks because, markets go up, markets go down. But over time, if you buy a house and keep a house, you can create exceptional wealth, far more wealth than you probably can in any other means in a shorter amount of time, because nothing is showing us that anything is any different than the market is going to appreciate at approximately 3% a year.
Yeah, I that's a great question, Amanda. Because,
It was bad long question, sorry.
but it's to me, I think I go back to that slide that shows the market, the average home price, to say even in 2006, if I would have bought and it goes down, it always goes up. And like, think about the houses that you could have bought in 2006 for 110,000 that are worth 350 now, right? And like being able to show them that, yes, there is some seasonality that happens in the market, and also like it's a good investment at the end of the day. Like, it's a good investment, and maybe I don't need to go to the Taylor Swift concert. Sorry, Danielle. And maybe I could save for the down payment on my house, right?
Yeah, and also, years ago when our parents couldn't afford something, they didn't do it. So if you want to live downtown because you got that great job and you're in your early 20s, well, don't throw away your money in rent. Go commute 45 minutes and go find something out in the suburbs, because by doing that, you're putting yourself in as a homeowner and you're building wealth. And maybe that's just the narrative that we as agents really need to just drive home, because the younger generation are the ones that should have been buying and they haven't. And, that doesn't solve the fact that we still have an inventory problem. But I think we have almost this noble obligation to keep on pushing the fact that you will be wealthy if you start owning real estate. And the younger you do it, lucky you, because you're going to have far more wealth as you get older.
Yeah, think about the person who buys at 24 versus 38. Like, how much more wealth they're going to have once they hit 50.
Yeah, nothing in your slides ever said that by owning a home, you don't make more money, have more wealth, and have, like you said, had you bought that house in 2006, you still would be ahead of the game. So, nothing is in any way disappointing, and we just got to get that message out better. And this has been great. Thank you for going through all these different slides.
Thanks, Amanda.
Say Rachel asked if it's more important to track units or volume.
Profit.
Yes, profit. I was just about to say that. I'm like, don't worry. And if you have the same amount of units, sorry, not units. If you're holding on your volume, but your units are down, you're still way ahead of the game because there are less units to go around right now.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah. If I had to order it out, it'd be profit, volume, and then units.
Unless your journey tool,
Yes.
just units for him.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Hopefully this was helpful to everyone. Good to see everyone.